Good afternoon. I see that our participants are entering into this webinar, so I was waiting a few minutes to allow the attendees and to log in. So welcome members of GUBERNA for this Home of Governance talk. In this episode, we will put the spotlights on a listed company. And what the timing, because if you have followed the press, you've seen that the founder and still CEO of EKOPAK, Peter Loos, has recently been awarded the Vlerik Venture Award 2022. But at GUBERNA, we are even more privileged to welcome the chairman of the board of directors of EKOPAK and an independent director of EKOPAK, namely Pieter Bourgeois. Welcome, good evening. And Regine Slagmulder, welcome, good evening. So people who already attended the Home of Governance talks knows a little bit the scenario, our script, and we start with a short introduction of what EKOPAK is doing, its activities, and its governance structure. So Peter, may I ask you as chair of EKOPAK to introduce briefly its activities and governance structure, please?
EKOPAK is a company that tries to turn water consumers into water producers. And basically what we do is provide in a decentralized, net independent solution companies with industrial process water. So typically customers would be heavy water users, could be pharma sector, chemicals, textiles, sectors like that. Governance structure, so we Alico, family office Marco, stepped into the share capital of the company in 2019. And basically what we try to do is try to combine the innovative solutions EKOPAK already provided in terms of providing water, industrial process water, with an intelligent new business model being WAS. Water as a service. So we do not sell installations, we do not sell machines, we sell water by cubic meter, which means obviously that we do the capex ourselves. So the company keeps the investment on its balance sheet, which means obviously that we step into a capex heavy and investment heavy business model. And yeah, we saw immediately the big demand for WAS solutions. Hence, we saw the need for a capital increase. And then at the end of 2020, we decided to go public and to raise that capital publicly. Main drivers, I think, versus private equity at that point in time were, yeah, I think the additional publicity an IPO provides you, and secondly, the additional credibility. We provide solutions for quite a lot of international customers, and I think the fact of being publicly quoted is well, as a reassurance for those companies that they're.
Thank you, Peter. Can you shortly also comment on the governance structure, because the IPO has also brought changes towards the governance structure?
Yeah. So extended the board today with two independent board directors, Regine obviously being one of them, and Christina Robinova. We did that at the IPO. There are today two representatives in the board of Pieter Loos, that is Tim de Maat and Pieter Loos himself. Tim being the COO of the company. And then from the family office from Alico side, there is myself and a colleague of mine called Ben Janssen.
Thank you, Regine. We just heard from Peter the benefits of being listed as a young entrepreneurial company. But of course, there are also some challenges, and you have quite some experience being board member also in other listed companies. What do you experience as the challenges in this growth path of EKOPAK?
Well, thank you, and good evening, everybody. Yeah, indeed, an IPO is a big step for a company, and Peter was just commenting on the governance. So one important change that we went through is indeed the composition of the board, because as a listed company, you are subject to a number of listing requirements, and of course you have to have some independent board members as well. So we have now a board of 7 members, as Peter was saying, some representatives of the reference shareholders, and then 2 independent directors. We also had to establish some committees, obviously, in the board, because we have now a formal audit committee, which is a legal requirement to have one. Consists of 3 members. I'm the chair as an independent director. There's another independent director, and then there's also Pieter Bourgeois, a non-executive but not independent director. So we meet on a quarterly basis, like any, I would say, regular audit committee. Our task is mainly to monitor and to safeguard the quality of the financial reporting process. Also make sure that the audit process is going well in close cooperation, of course, with our external auditor. And what we also do, because we're a relatively small company, we do not have a separate risk committee, so it's an audit committee that also takes care of the risk assessment. In this case, we had to start basically from a clean sheet of paper. We had, of course, all the risks that were listed in a very comprehensive manner in the IPO prospectus. But of course, that's not the type of instrument that you use as a board to run the company, let's say, on an ongoing basis, because the requirements there are different. So we basically looked at that list of risk, and we changed them and made them into a list that is more, let's say, manageable on a recurring basis. So that's the audit committee. We also, and although we're not legally required, we also installed the remuneration and nomination committee right from the start, because we wanted to do it in a professional manner. We meet twice a year, so 3 members. I'm a member, someone else is the chair, and then we have one other independent director. I would say here again, because a lot of things are still, let's say, in an early stage of development, is at least at the start of when we started, our main task was, and still is today, to think about a coherent remuneration policy, because indeed things are done in a certain way, but we constantly challenge ourselves, is this the best way forward for the company? And one thing that we're currently working hard on is, for example, to link that remuneration policy to some sustainability metrics, which is an important thing, but perhaps we will come to that next. So that is one area where I think the board had made a stepwise change. Of course, as a chair of the audit committee, there's also the whole reporting issue, which has to be professionalized. It was a small, medium-sized company, and now suddenly you're a stock listed company. So there's the whole IFRS reporting that needs to be taken care of. I think together with our CFO, we're also working hard on the digitalization of the finance function, so that the people in the business can, especially our CFO, can focus more on let's say, the value-added part of the reporting and the finances, rather than on the transactional stuff. So that's, I would say, an important area of improvement that we have been going through. And then also the non-financial reporting, given that sustainability is at the heart of our organization, it makes a lot of sense for us to also try to professionalize there. But those are some of the challenges of moving from a relatively small growth company to a stock listed company. But well, so that's.
Thank you, Regine. You already touched upon quite some elements that I like to further deepen a little bit. And I also welcome questions from the audience. You can put them in the Q&A and we will tackle them along the journey of this webinar. But you touched upon the sustainability. We know that it's a very hot topic and very topical issue. Peter, can you explain a little bit, because of course the sustainability is the DNA of your business activities. But we've seen also on the website that EKOPAK has defined an ambitious sustainability strategy based on the SDGs. You also have joined the UN Global Compact. I already saw a question. You still you don't have yet a B Corp certificate yet. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. So to answer the first question, indeed, we do not have a B Corp certificate yet, but maybe a couple of steps before that. I think obviously the company is breeding ESG in terms of providing ESG solutions for its customers, decreasing water consumption, making water consumption circular, making sure that water scarcity in a global way is or in a way is decreased, of course, but also decreasing the use of chemicals, decreasing the use of electricity, even decreasing the use of CO2 by reusing waste, which is used in industrial processes. So it's the solutions EKOPAK provides for its customers are obviously ESG driven and deliver ESG results. But what we thought is, okay, let's also focus on the company itself and broader on all the stakeholders of the company, meaning obviously suppliers, employees, customers, but also investors, and basically the community as a whole. So quite quickly after the IPO, we became UN Global Compact member, which is, I think, a first step, and obviously focuses you to work on these sustainable development goals across a broad range of domains. It's human rights, it's labor, it's obviously also environment, but it also touches upon things as anti-corruption. So it's quite a broad range of actionable domains. And secondly, I think last year we decided to partner with to use the advice of ENCOM to guide us through, okay, how are we going to translate our actions as a company into really, let's say actionable items and also KPIs. And that's basically the exercise that the company went through. Now which resulted in 4 pillars: in providing renewable water, providing safe water, focus on the EKOPAK, as we call the team, the employees, and then responsible asset management. And within those 4 pillars, we developed a set of KPIs, which will be used as our ESG reporting, of course, but it will be used to measure the ESG performance of the company, but also to measure the targets of the management, etc. So it's really we wanted really to do a thorough exercise, and I think we did so. It will also next year be published in the first integrated annual report. So we will not have an annual report and a sustainability report. We will have basically one combined report in which we combine everything.
taking up the point of the reporting, Regine, as also your role within the committee. There is a question from the audience. Do you apply standard frameworks like SBTI for your non-financial report? And how do you avoid greenwashing in the report? That's perhaps a more general question.
Yeah. Indeed. So like Peter was explaining, we have been also as a board together with the management, we've been really thinking through our sustainability strategy. So it's not like we run the business as usual and then, oops, all of a sudden it's that time of the year to think about reporting. So we just write a few paragraphs that go into the annual report, for example. No, it's really been a thorough exercise because indeed, as we were saying earlier, the whole business of EKOPAK is about doing good for the world and helping companies to minimize the negative impact on the environment, especially the water consumption. But at the same time, of course, we also have to make sure that we do well, we perform well for our shareholders and for the growth of the company. So we're trying to balance all those elements. In terms of the annual report, I would say we're not there yet that we have, let's say, a fully integrated report in the full sense of the word. We're working towards it. I think we've already made quite a lot of progress. But the first time that we will aspire to have a fully integrated report will be next year. So this year we reported an annual report with the financials, but also important components on our strategy and on a number of things related to our sustainability strategy in particular. Do we use standard frameworks? Well, to come back to the UN Global Compact thing. So we, first of all, let me take a step back. So the integrated reporting, we very much believe at EKOPAK that indeed the whole range of issues and opportunities for us cannot be fully captured just in the annual set of financials, so that the story is much richer than that. And we would like to use the opportunity of the integrated reporting to tell that story to the outside world by integrating it with our strategy, which is already the case in today's annual report or this year's annual report. Also with focus on the business model, on the performance, the governance, etc., the forward-looking perspective. So it's all there, but we still need to sort of add that finishing touch. So in that sense, I would say to be a little more patient. But then in terms of the frameworks, the UN Global Impact has been an important, let's say, also aspiration for the company, not a driving force, because it's a bit chicken and egg. We've always been very conscious about the whole sustainability. So the UN Global Compact membership that we voluntarily applied for was a natural step for us. So what we have done is we have developed a sustainability report because the Global Compact requires that you have this follow-up reporting, the communication on progress, as it's called. So you have to show to the world what you're doing and how you manage the transition, etc. So it's not like a nice thing on a corporate website somewhere. So you have to have a well-developed sustainability report. So we wrote that report. Once a year we will follow up on that. So that is like a methodology, and for us also a forcing device to really develop our sustainability strategy according to a set of principles as they're outlined in the Global Compact. So and we also have in that sustainability report a kind of a page where we explicitly show where those 10 principles are being talked about in the annual report. So that is kind of a framework that we use. But of course, every company has the freedom to do it the way they like. But it's very extensive. It's not just about the environment. It's also about human rights, about labor, as Peter was saying, about corruption, anti-corruption, etc. So it's quite comprehensive, and it forced us also to think beyond the impact on the environment, which is one component. A second thing that we set of standards that we indeed applied complied with, let's say, when we put together our annual report and our sustainability report, more specifically, is the GRI standards. Mm-hmm. So the Global Reporting Initiative, which is, as you know, provides a common language, a global common language for companies to communicate environment, etc., climate change, etc. So they provide some standardized definitions, and we followed also that framework. So we have also in our sustainability report a GRI index where we list what are the standardized definitions and how, where in the report can you find information on that. So it's of course, it's still a work in progress, but it's already an important step for us. And we were very proud of having achieved that. So for those of you who are interested, it's on the website since April, I think we posted
take the
it,
words out of my mouth. I'm not sure if it's a correct English expression, but I would say I would definitely invite our members to have a look at it, because we were very impressed by that reporting. That's why we thought it would be interesting to bring it up in this webinar. But you touched upon it, Regine, is that there is a lot of attention for environment and for climate, the E in ESG, but of course there is also the S in ESG. So Peter, we've seen that EKOPAK has also of doing efforts in the more social dimension with the Save Water, Give Water program. Could you explain a little bit what is your aim with that program, and what do you want to, of course, to obtain and reach with that social program?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting story. I think it started with a couple of people in the team watching a documentary called Brave Blue World. It's on Netflix, and it discusses basically the impact of global warming on water scarcity globally. And that documentary is made by or supported by a non-profit organization called water.org, which is founded by Matt Damon. First of all, we started to get in contact with water.org, and we aimed for Matt Damon to be a cornerstone investor in the IPO. That didn't succeed, but the organization is very interesting, because what they do, it's a non-profit organization, obviously, and their mission is to increase safe drinking water, or the availability of safe drinking water globally for people that do not have access to it. And then we thought, okay, how can we cooperate and try to actively cooperate in trying to achieve that mission. And that's how we came up with the Save Water, Give Water program. And basically what we propose to our client is that for every employee of our client, we, together with the client, we provide the funds to provide an entire family with safe drinking water through an EKOPAK installation by either doing it based on rainwater or purified groundwater. But what we do is obviously it has a social impact, but more importantly, it also has an impact in terms of emancipation, because in a lot of countries where safe drinking water is not available, it's young girls and women that have to literally walk every day a couple of hours just to get access to safe drinking water. And by getting them access to safe drinking water in their village, we reduce that time significantly, which then means they have time to go to school or to get an education. So it's really it's a program. We believe in it from the first time. It's basically also one of the goals to so it's a 50-50 investment. The customer chooses to step into the program, then for every euro the customer puts in, EKOPAK does the same. And it's also one of our goals to try to maximize the number of customers we have to step into this program.
Mm-hmm. Very nice, thank you, Peter. We also have the G in ESG. Regine already explained a little bit how the governance structure and the committees look like at this moment. Before asking my question, Regine, there is, or Peter, there is also a question about a sustainability committee. Why or why not? Or have you considered? I see already Peter unmuting, yeah. So Peter, go ahead.
It's an interesting question. Actually, I think we haven't thought about it yet. I think we're all, across the board, all really occupied with the topic of sustainability, of course. It could be an idea to have a special committee in the future. I think nowadays it's probably still a bit early days to do so. We've been a listed company for 1 year now, a bit over 1 year. So we're trying to professionalize the current working of the board and different committees. But could be a good idea.
Of course, with committees, the question is always, indeed, do you need to set up a specialized committee that is dedicated to one topic, and then you have interesting discussions around that topic within the committee with a summary to the full board, or do you have the conversation immediately in the full board? I think, like Peter was saying, in our case at the moment, we're having the sustainability discussions with the full board because it's so core to our strategy that we do not want to, indeed, Rome is not built in 1 day, so we can't do everything at the same time. But that said, I think, indeed, I'm not even sure we would like that. I won't speak for Peter, but when you set up a committee, you automatically create a bit of an information asymmetry also between the people in the committee who've discussed the details and then the full board who's just there to hear the summary version and move on. So I'm not sure for the moment, and we recently had a special board on the sustainability strategy, which was very enlightening also for the board members who are not on a day-to-day basis dealing with that. So I think at this stage of our development, I think everybody benefits from going through the process together. Maybe at a later stage, as Peter is saying, yes, we might consider it. But for the moment, I think, it's something that indeed has not been set up yet.
It's coming.
But we do have a sustainability work group that we set up at the management level within the company, and they report to the board, and they have regular meetings. And I'm sure if there's something that would, you have to understand the communication lines at EKOPAK are fairly short. So if something is of strategic importance that would be discussed at that committee, even though it's not at board level, the board would be immediately informed. I'm sure that.
You lead me to the dynamics in the board, Regine, because you already mentioned even with committees, there is some information asymmetry possible, or you don't have the full board engaging in the discussion. Looking at your board composition and with the stronger representatives from the reference shareholders, you're there as the independent director. How do you experience board board dynamics, and of course board decision making?
Well, it's an interesting let's say, board to be on from a number of perspectives, of course. Of course, when you talk about board dynamics, there's first of all, there's the team dynamics, which is with people with different personalities, different backgrounds, different levels of experience sitting on boards. That in itself creates already some, let's say, some adjustment. You have to get used to one another. You only meet once every 3 months, so that's not probably enough to really know each other inside out. Some people work together on a day-to-day basis. Others only see each other in those board meetings. So that creates indeed an interesting dynamic. But I think we found our place, as we said, fairly quickly. I mean, and also I would say thanks to the role of the chairman. So that was, and it's enriching. So we're so different. Some people are so different, but it's sometimes people say, oh yeah, board diversity leads to better decisions and is enriching. Yes, but some say until you have it, and then people start to realize that diversity is harder to manage. So it's, but in our case, I think that goes fairly smoothly. What you touched on, Abby, the composition with two, let's say, important reference shareholders and then the independent directors. When I look at the two reference shareholders, first of all, there's of course the CEO, the founder of the company. Now this is again a young organization. It's not a mature, established family enterprise where the paterfamilias is still the dominant figure. Our CEO is very eager, very keen to learn, very is very open also to absorb input from the board. So in that sense, it's a real let's say pleasure to see that. Of course, he has his own opinions, and it's not that we always immediately agree on everything, but that makes part of a good board discussion, I think. Then the other reference shareholder, which we have Peter here in the webinar. Of course, that's an important given. Now, I think that at least from my experience as an independent director, it's important that everybody understands that we're not there to serve the shareholders. The board is there to serve all the stakeholders and work for the benefit of the company. And I have so far not experienced any moment where one of the reference shareholders would try to do something that would be beneficial to them, but not necessarily to the rest of the company. So far, no. I think, and Peter should confirm that Aliclo is there, I think, for with a long-term perspective. What is interesting is that we can also tap into the network. So everybody has their own network, and Aliclo obviously also. What is important to look, to take care of is indeed the information exchange, so that all board members, both dependents and or non the executive, you have executives, you have non-executives that are not independent, and then you have the independents, that there is good information flow, that there's no privileges and information sharing there. But so far, I have to say, and in terms of the discussion in the boardroom, like I said, we can openly debate. There's not a lot of, at this point in time, at least, no politics playing. There's room for debate, for disagreement, but at the end we all rally around the common purpose, and I think it's a nice board to be in. I have to say that so far the company has been doing very well, is very successful, so that makes it relatively easy to be all aligned. Let's face it. Perhaps we should talk again after we've been through some crisis, whatever, but so far I
take note of that. I take note. Peter, a lot of flowers for you in the sense of an important role of the chair. You're there as the investor for the midterm, for the benefit of the company, not for your own shareholder benefit. Maybe hear your point of view on these elements.
Yeah, I think Regine is right. Obviously, as a family office, we have the luxury of investing for the long run. And as long as we see sustainable growth, it's it's a luxury for us to be able to stay on board as an investor. Yeah, and I think in the board, I think we have a good atmosphere in the board. We have good discussions. As Regine said, it's obviously also, I mean, it's a fastly growing company that did a successful IPO. So it's basically the luxury of managing the growth. So we have not experienced difficult times. I think for myself personally, it was also, let's say, a growth track in that sense that, well, I've been a board member in quite a lot of companies, but never as a chairman. And I think it's quite a different role. First of all, in terms of, let's say, being a kind of mirror or sparring partner for the CEO, but also trying not to be too involved as an administrator yourself, and trying to guide the group, if it's possible, towards consensus and towards decision making. So it was definitely for myself a learning curve as well. But I think now the cooperation is really good. Looking forward to the future on that one.
Looking to the future from the governance perspective, how do you perceive the further evolution on governance as a young listed companies? Are you thinking of an additional independent director? I also have the question, what type of board members would you need to go to the next step?
So what is the biggest dream of the company? I think, first of all, trying to really have an impactful difference in like projects like Waterkracht, which we have announced in January, where we basically will reuse the wastewater of 400,000 Antwerp families and to use it as process water in the port of Antwerp. I think then you're really doing projects that do have a significant impact. I think what is the goal to have more of these, of course, to go abroad and to be able to have similar business models or solutions. That's of course the goal, I think. And indeed, I think a first step, or one of the first steps, would also be to extend the board with an additional independent board member, which would bring I think knowledge and experience that is complementary to the knowledge and experience we have in the board today. It's a debate we will have this year. We've also announced that we really I think we are ready now to extend the board with another independent board member. So it's something that's on the agenda now.
You know, you can always post your vacancy in the network of GUBERNA, small commercial in between. But there is another question. Maybe Regine, the question is integrated in the strategy, the business model, the corporate structure. What about the collaboration with suppliers and contractors, or their requirements on sustainability put forward? It corresponds with the upcoming regulation of having it through the full value chain and things like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm the best place to answer that. I have not a clear view on that. I'm sure there's certain, when we put together the contracts with our suppliers, that there's certain things that, especially from a compliance point of view, everything is covered. But perhaps the question goes beyond that. I don't have a good, clear visibility on that. I don't know, Peter, if you know what we do with our suppliers.
Yeah, it was definitely part of the 4 pillars on responsible asset management, I think. But I can't, and for instance, one of the initiatives I can remember is trying to decrease the use of packaging by our suppliers. But to go in detail there, it's
we should invite Peter Loos for that. But indeed, you know, there is some new regulation from the European Commission. There is also that question: is as a young listed company, do you think it's proportional for listed companies on the new requirements that is coming to us on different aspects? Especially the sustainability governance directive, you have the reporting, new reporting, you have the new standards and so on and so on. There is a whole range, and I'm not already talk about the Women on Board directive. We'll come back to that on the diversity issue, but
oh yeah, it's a bit like also with risk management. Some people say in regulated industries, for example, the risk reporting is and sort of burden on the company, administrative burden on the company is so heavy that it's no longer value added, especially for smaller organizations. I think with sustainability, we're heading a bit in the same direction. There's a lot coming. I think EKOPAK's perspective for the moment is it's coming anyway, so let's get prepared. Let's make sure that we do what's necessary, and even beyond the bare minimum. I think sometimes I also have this feeling like we're doing so many things, we're active on so many fronts. I mean, can the organization indeed take it on to also try to excel on certain things? But the answer is yes. There's just a tremendous ambition also with the management and with our CEO to be ahead of the pack, because it's so ingrained in our business. That's indeed for us, at least from, and I think I can also speak for the management, it's not perceived as a bureaucratic burden, but as something that can help us position ourselves. And it's been so far, I can say that probably because so far it's been a good forcing device, if I can call it that way, to really professionalize in a relatively short time period, and we had to because of the listing and because of all the requirements. But like the UN Global Compact was a voluntary thing, so but still we wanted to be there because we feel it adds value. It's part of who we are as a company, and part of our DNA, as you said. So far so good, but perhaps again, if it keeps coming, indeed, for some companies, I think the whole there's a lot of good initiatives, but sometimes these initiatives die under their own weight, and I hope the pendulum will not swing too far in that direction. But we'll see. It's too early to tell as far as EKOPAK is concerned.
Yeah, we'll come back to you, not only in the crisis, but also in the further requirement. Peter, if we look at the composition of your board, I think congratulations on also the aspect of gender diversity. I point my question to the man in the group. But what about, we also know that the broader issue of diversity, inclusion also within the company, and not only on the board level but on different levels. We have the Women on Board directive also that will come to us. At least we still need to transpose it in national law, of course, but I mean it's also a hot topic today. How is the company dealing with that topic, and especially also on board, from a board perspective?
Yeah, from a board perspective, I think in terms of diversity, we are 3 women on board. I think it was an intention point from the beginning, from the IPO. So I think that is okay. Obviously, I think if you look at the team, I think there we can increase the level of diversity. But I think coming back to the question I see, EKOPAK should attract more easily high-level youngsters. It's actually one of the first questions I asked Peter back in 2019. Do you find enough skilled people? And his answer was exactly this answer. It's the company culture and more importantly, the ESG driven culture of the company is indeed really an asset. and we do attract youngsters. And I do hope that in doing so, we will also attract a more diverse workforce over the years. So also, I hope young women will be part of that, obviously. But it's really, I think, a good thing to see that the young generation of engineers is really, let's say, apart from compensation package or other perks, is really driven also by what is the purpose of this company, and does this company have a positive impact basically on our environment and society, and also really base their choices on that. So it's a good thing to see.
Regine, I see you're nodding. Would you like to add something as a female board member?
I'm nodding in agreement with my chairman. No, it's indeed it's a bit contagious when you listen to Peter Lozan and also Peter Bourgeois, but Peter Lozan and other members of the management. It's contagious that indeed that purpose. I remember the very first time I spoke with Peter Lozan. He said, everybody who wants to work for my company has to make a vow, make a pledge around 3 dimensions, and in Dutch they add up to the acronym 8, which is vow, EED, vow in Dutch. It's about every decision, everything we do has to have economic impact, has to be ecologically sound, and has to be long-term and sustainable. And for him, those are the important values that the company wants to project. And I think that's the glue that holds the organization together. And I think it indeed attracts young talent who wants to do more than just have a job and work for a company. They want to indeed contribute to a purpose. And I think that's very clearly the case here. So that's why I was nodding.
You're really how we say, inspiring people to apply for a job at EKOPAK. But there is another question. It's quite I think a rather detailed question, but I would like to put them forward. What kind of project initiative have you launched to meet the SDG 15 life on land?
Yeah, I think
it's a test to see.
No, I think basically what the core business of the company is trying to make water use more circular. If you do this on a really large scale, it should increase the level of water supplies we have on land. It should also decrease the effect of severe droughts. I think we've experienced it in Flanders, in Belgium, already a couple of times, the risk of blue out. So, I mean, yeah, increasing the level of groundwater will indirectly benefit, obviously, life on land.
Mm-hmm. If I may come back to a point that already was raised in the beginning of this conversation, is that also as investors also pay a lot of attention now to sustainability issues. You had your annual meeting already. Do you feel pressure, specific attention from other shareholders and the reference shareholder on these topics? We've also been with GUBERNA enrolling into sessions on the shareholder activism, things like that. Have you experienced that?
I think even before the annual meeting, I've assisted quite a couple of roadshows before we went public, and it's clear that ESG and every ESG are very are increasingly important for institutional investors. We got quite a lot of questions on that in the roadshows, specifically also from large Scandinavian investors. But quite important. I don't think we got a lot of activist shareholders on the annual meeting. We had a very good annual meeting, I think. But indeed, the topic that is raised through written questions then was the topic around an additional independent board member. That's a topic that comes back.
And you mean an additional independent?
Yeah, versus the situation we have today. So that's something. That's a question that is raised by institutional investors today when it comes to EKOPAK.
Mm-hmm. Regine, I see you're nodding. So
no, it's true that the analysts also they monitor that. They have their own ESG scoring models that they apply to a range of companies, and then you see what they how they assess these companies. So we don't escape that. So far, there's been, like Peter was saying, and nothing that we did not expect. I mean, we know it. We have to still work on a number of things, but like we said, we've only been on the stock market for 1 year, and I think we've already had quite the journey. So, but the journey is not finished, far from that. So we realize that. So some of these issues will be on our next the agenda of our next board meeting. So yeah, the relevant points, but we're working on them.
Mm-hmm. One of the elements that was also seen as now best practices is including these non-financial KPIs into the remuneration scheme. Could you perhaps elaborate a little bit more on that aspects, because we've seen a lot of studies of our colleague at Fleric for executive pay of our partners that it's not yet very common, and so perhaps there are some lessons learned from or tips that you could bring on that point towards other companies as a best practice.
Yeah, so as Regine told, so it's quite a recent exercise for us. So we basically just finished the sustainability report and underlying KPIs, which will be used to monitor the performance of the company. But I think it's a given that these KPIs will also be used in the remuneration of the management. It's too early to say what weight they will have and what the impact will be, but I think the principle of using the set of KPIs and the remuneration of the management is defined, and I think it's basically not even a question of the board. It's the management itself. It's also, I mean, the exercise has been largely driven by the management team and sustainability team within the management team. So I think it's they ask it themselves to be also measured on their performance on these KPIs. I think the principle, there's no discussion about the principle, how we will define it in the end, and what the weight will be, and that we haven't defined yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, indeed. It's also, it's a point of attention indeed, like I was saying at the beginning of our remuneration committee. So where your question is very timely, because that's exactly what we're working on. Defining a number of KPIs is not so difficult. I mean, there's lots of KPIs. If you just Google on the internet and you look for sustainability KPIs, there's whole lists that you can use. But what we want is something that's specifically capturing the essence of our strategy, and that's an exercise that requires some back and forth discussion, so that indeed it's not like you were saying earlier, some greenwashing where you define some KPIs that look nice in our annual report. We really want to make them a living thing in the organization and sort of inspire people to improve on those dimensions. So that's why we need to let's say apply a lot of care to the specific selection of those KPIs and their weights, etc. So to indeed make sure that where we currently are, maybe I can real, is that we have a number of KPIs defined, but we want to know what the baseline is, because when you set a KPI, you have to define a target But how do you know whether your target is ambitious enough or whether it's just okay? So we're currently in the process, together with the management, of course, and then with an external party, to define where do we stand today, and so that we can build in the necessary stretch. Because we do not want to make it too easy either. There has to be some challenge, some tiptoe objectives, realistic but healthy challenge. But that's where we stand. So we're currently defining the baseline to then, in the next stage, set the right level of ambition. So yeah, but it's work in progress. But we're getting there.
Another topic we can tackle in our follow-up session on that. I've seen another question coming in. For your future investments, would you consider issuing green bonds to raise additional capital? Investors are increasingly looking for impact, which is not easy to demonstrate in secondary markets.
That's really looking into the far future, I would say. Well, first of all, I think if we would raise additional capital, it would be a good sign for the company, because it would mean that we have basically used the capital that we raised in the IPO to the full extent, and to support the equity components in our WALS installation. So it would imply that we have reached our midterm business plan. It's really too early days. I think it's first of all working hard to deliver the business plan, the midterm target we have put in our prospectus. So it's I think it's early days. Theoretically, I think, or hypothetically today, I would answer a straight capital increase would probably be the best for the company, as it would increase the free float and probably attract even more institutional investors. But it's really early days.
Okay, Regine, maybe to come to an end on this webinar, could you share some tips for the GUBERNA members, either for those who really want to embark on a sustainability journey with the board of directors, because we've seen that a lot of boards are still struggling to really grasp the sustainability journey, or tips on other topics of governance and boards that you would like to share with our members?
Yeah, of course, that's a whole thing. First of all, I would say on the sustainability thing, the board has indeed an important role to play here. In our case, I think the driving force is very much the management and the strategy and the business. And the board is, I would say the board needs to continuously indeed emphasize and signal the importance. So it's not just a compliance issue for the reporting, it's really part of your strategy, and it needs to be integrated. It's not an afterthought. It's not like you have to think about strategy as a board and then you add some sustainability things to it. No, it has to be both risks and opportunities. That's one of my other favorite things. So that level of integration is key, and embedding it in the business, and indeed demonstrating, signaling that it's important, making it a recurring item on the agenda. That's I think key for a board, making sure it's not just considered in a reactive matter when something happened, and then make it proactive, make it part of the story, the strategic story of your organization, so that it becomes real, and also stimulate this culture. That's what I find very let's say inspiring and exciting about EKOPAK, that it's really part of the the DNA of the company in a positive manner, not as a risk, as something to be afraid of, but as a growth engine. And if you can get that dynamic going, then that's very powerful. But the board is there as, let's say, as a supporter on the sideline, as a catalyst. But indeed, that is on the sustainability part what I would suggest. That's what I've learned at EKOPAK. But perhaps Peter has other.
You can add some additional tips, Peter, and then we close.
No, I think for me, that exercise was about being open-minded, also being transparent as a company. Or to be more transparent, let's say, than in the past, at least. And also, for me, it's a bit of a gimmick, but I never forget that profitability, being profitable, is also a part of being sustainable. If this business model is not profitable, it will not be sustainable in the long run. So, those were the key things for me.
That's a very powerful closing. On behalf of all participants, on behalf of the full GUBERNA team, on behalf also of our CEO who put the message already in the chat or the Q&A, thank you very much. We were very privileged at this perfect timing in the news of EKOPAK to have you here in our Home of Governance talks, and I hope next time we can do it in live and physically. So thank you very much, Regine, Peter, for your contribution and your openness and your sharing your insights a little bit behind the scenes of EKOPAK, behind what we could read. I wish you all the best in the next stage and in the near future and long-term future of EKOPAK. I turn to the participants. I welcome you, of course, and invite you to have a look at their website, at the reporting, to get really more detailed information on EKOPAK. I also invite you to look at our calendar, because the next coming is our summer school. For those who has not registered, there is the topic on sustainability, much more on sustainability next week in our summer school. And the next episode of our Home of Governance is in September, dus after the summer break, and then we will have a representative of a public state-owned company. So a completely different type of company, but at least interesting as well. Thank you very much and enjoy.
Thanks for having us. Okay. Thank you. Bye. Have a nice
Bye-bye.
evening. Bye. Thank you.